This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, hey, we've been off for a couple of weeks over the holidays. It's great to be back on the air. This is our first show of 2022. Obviously, we hope it's a much, much better year than 2021. It hasn't started off really well.
Well, that's an understatement.
It hasn't started.
I don't want to
really
say
well.
anything, but last year was a nightmare.
We had a president that
I expect Johnny Depp to show up any second now.
That was going to get us out of this COVID mess. We got more COVID cases than we've ever had. The other day, I saw we had 1 million cases in one day. A million new positive COVID cases in one day.
That's right. And you know what? I'm not even freaking out about it.
I'm just not. Me neither.
My whole attitude's changed in this whole thing, Neil.
But it's funny how the Democrats who were completely freaking out about it when
they have to.
When
That's all they got.
When President Trump was in office, and now you're breaking all kinds of records with COVID. And it's crickets, right? It's like they're kind of really weird about it because on some side, like the teachers union in Chicago, right? They just closed all the schools down, just close all the schools down because of COVID.
That's right.
And I think why you say you're not freaking out about it, we're not freaking out about it. A lot of people aren't freaking because it is really just like a case of the cold.
It's not a pandemic anymore. It's an endemic. An endemic is something like we still live today with the 1918 Spanish flu. We have that. But it's morphed so many times and mutated that it's a relatively benign scenario, relatively, to what it was in 1918. It's not the same thing. So we have now gone through 3 mutations of this scenario, of this virus. And it's becoming more benign as it keeps changing. So the good news is the more it grows, the more it changes, the more it grows, the more it changes. You're not going to stop it. It's not going to happen. So I don't want to hear anymore about if you have the vaccine, you don't have the vaccine. It is so confusing. It's like I'm watching Monty Python. And none of it makes sense to me anymore, except Monty Python does make sense more than Joe Biden. At least they conjugate verbs correctly, and Joe Biden has a lot of trouble with that. So that's my attitude about it, Neil. I'm just saying.
Well, I think you're right.
Move on. Do what you have to do. Protect yourself, which I think everyone wants to do in America. That's the way to go. And have a life. You only get one life. There are no do-overs. There's no videotape of, hey, I came back and here it is. You know what I mean? So that's the way it is for me.
But, that's...
On that happy note, let's have birthday cake.
But, one of the things that we're facing because of this... and we can't deny, is just the lack of workers and the lack of people who want to work.
Oh, it's terrible. Terrible.
Right. And all of our businesses are facing it. And it's not just in one industry. And it's not, supply chain, it disrupted all of our imports. But look, labor is disrupting all of our supply chain here domestically. And not just in one part of our economy, but across all of our economy, energy, manufacturing, and also the production of food. I mean, we're seeing that as well. The lack of people to work. And there's a very large grower of fruit down in South Florida in Homestead, a very, very great place just south of Miami. And big agricultural estates. And because of the weather there, they just grow all kinds of incredible stuff. I mean, I lived in Southeast Asia for many years, and a lot of these really exotic fruits that I was introduced to in Southeast Asia, is grown right here in Florida. And the stuff is shipped all over the country. And one of the largest producers and growers of tropical fruits is Unity Growers in Homestead, Florida. And its president and CEO is with us right now, Louie Carricarte. Louie, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you.
So tell me, what is your experience? I mean, you have a huge agricultural operation shipping tropical and ethnic specialty produce, both fruit and vegetables, around the country. You really a lot of really great stuff. Go to Unity Groves and look at the stuff that they're growing here in Florida. Absolutely amazing. And so how are you managing your business? Are you getting the people that you need to work? I mean, to grow the stuff, to pick the food, to pack it, to ship it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on within your business to be able to provide your products and produce around the country. I mean, how are you getting it done?
So we're having besides the normal challenges we face, we're having probably people has been our most difficult lately. What's happened is I'm wearing out my good people, and I just can't get people to show up. I can't get people to work, and it's killing us. It's killing all the ones that are showing up. So we employ over 200 people right now, and we're at least 40 short. So it's proven to be a big challenge. And
well, let me ask you, Louie. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. You deal with you supply produce to some pretty significant people around the country. So you've got to work every day making this thing happen. And if you're supposed to have 200 and change people working for you, why aren't these people showing up? And what do they say to you? You got to say something. Why aren't they showing up?
Well, that's a whole.
Other than that, hey, listen, I'm not coming.
Quite a bit. No, yeah. Well, for the first time, I can't. The way we handle our employees has changed a lot, because if they're late, we have to put up with it. If, they can't work today, we have to put up with it because we're so short. We're really suffering through things. Back 3 or 4 years ago, we had a waiting list always. Everyone wanted to work. And a lot of them will tell me, too, they're better off staying at home, that they're doing better off. Why are they going to show up to work when they could stay home and actually make more money?
Yeah, sure. And so what you're saying is that those who are remaining and coming in, and the loyalists, we'll call them, the good guys. So they're working what, couple of shifts, 3 shifts? They're burning themselves out doing that.
They're working on average 2 shifts, which can be up to 80 hours.
So the unintended consequence is that you take an employee who's really good and has these skills that you need to whatever that's going to be, whether it's out in the field or it's inside in the warehouse and packing and sending and whatever, it's a pretty big operation, that they're going to ultimately say one day that they can't work, or they're going to get sick, or they don't like this. They're going to, it's sort of like you reach your Peter's principle. You achieve, and then you get to a level that you're trying to do so much that all the stuff that you did prior to that makes no difference. You're going to fail because you reached a point of breaking. You kind of break emotionally, physically, and so forth. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Neil, why don't we see what Ed Renzi has to say about that, from former CEO of McDonald's?
If this continues the way it is, it's going to be nothing but a greater and greater catastrophe. And boy, we're feeling it big time in restaurants, barbershops, daycare centers. It's a nightmare. And the unemployment benefits are very rich, and there's no reason to go back to work. So you've got a confluence of events here that are really starting to pile on top of one another.
So, you listen to him. I mean, it sounds like you're having the same problems that he's having in some of his companies.
Sure. And we have a good core of people that have been here. Most of the people that are showing up have been here years, and they understand it. But, our business affects a lot of different things. We use a lot of different materials. We use a lot of fuel. We use different parts, a lot of vehicles, a lot of equipment, which is all having the same issues. We can't get tractors. We can't get certain things. I mean, to get a John Deere tractor now is over 6 months. But yet we don't have the tractors we need to do our operation. So
hey, Lewis, if it makes you feel any better, Lewis, it took me 6 months to get a GE dryer. I just want to tell you that. You can't drive it, you can't run around with it, but you can't use it because you couldn't get it. So I didn't think about that. So the point of the matter is that not only do you not have the people who are coming in every day to work the fields and the packing and so forth, you can't even get at times the machinery that you need for the folks that aren't there to drive because they to make it happen. So I mean, how do you survive on that, Lewis? What do you do?
You pray, I guess. I mean, look, I had to go. We used to subcontract all our trucking. Yeah, well. We used to subcontract all our trucking. I ended up having to lease and buy our own trucks, and now I can't find drivers for those trucks just because I couldn't deliver our goods. It is getting to the breaking point, and now, when workers get sick, they're mandated to stay home. So this last wave, we had half the employees home sick at some points. You can't.
How about now? Now, are you seeing COVID? Is it starting to lessen any, or are you seeing the surge of COVID?
We are now on the tail end. We had a surge maybe a week or two ago, and now and it had kind of timed with the holidays, which actually helped us a little. But the people we have want to work. They're showing up. They just need to get their negative the way we're required to do it. So
there was a news report this week that I had read that we've lost 4.5 million workers, in the last year. In other words, 4.5 million people that was working a year ago never rejoined the workforce. And that, the article, the gist of the article is that by losing these 4.5 million people from the workforce, it is really going to cause a lot of problems throughout our economy. And it's going to touch everywhere. And it's certainly touching the agricultural side of our economy, the food supply of our economy, which is hugely, hugely important. Hey, Louie, unfortunately, we're out of time, and we really appreciate you being with us. Louie Carricarte, who is the president and CEO of Unity Groves down in Homestead, Florida, shipping produce and fruits all over the country. We really appreciate you joining us, Louie.
Thank you, John. Coming
up, Dr. Rich and I got a lot of things to cover. I mean, I got to tell you, there is a lot going on. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin. So, Rich, we're gonna dive into the supply chain, and we're very, very happy to report that President Biden saved Christmas, and
he
at
did.
least that
single-handedly he did that.
What Jen Psaki had said, who is the press secretary of the White House. And this soundbite is rather long, but there's a lot here to unpack. But we're going to listen to it in its entirety because, there's just so much misinformation going on here. It's astounding. Let's listen to what Jen had to say.
Also, just wanted to note the president, of course, just met with a number of business leaders and industry leaders about efforts to address bottlenecks in the supply chain. I think you all saw him give remarks on that as well. But as the New York Times said today, Christmas gifts are arriving on time this year. Good news, we've saved Christmas. And that is because President Biden recognized this challenge early, acted as an honest broker to bring key stakeholders together, and focused on addressing practical problems across the global supply chain. Here are just a few key points of progress. The number of containers sitting on the docks at the ports of LA and Long Beach for over 8 days have fallen by nearly 50%. The average amount of time containers sit on docks has fallen by a week. The price of shipping a container between Asia and the West Coast has fallen by more than 25% since its peak in September. And as the president also referenced, the stocks on shelves is at about 90%, retail stocks on shelves at about 90% inventory. It was about 91% pre-pandemic, just to give you a sense. So people can go purchase presents even at this point if they haven't done their shopping.
So Rich, that's amazing that she's putting that out there, but it's not true. I got to tell you, I'm a global entrepreneur. I got a lot of businesses around the world. We got manufacturing plants here in the United States. We need to import products, components, materials, and different things to keep our business running. Right now, the supply chain it's getting worse. It's getting worse.
Yeah,
it hasn't gotten better. And in fact, there was back in November and early December, there was a little bit of an easing of the situation. It wasn't like the shipping rates had really gone down. It wasn't like the port congestion had really improved a lot. But it seemed to be heading in a more positive direction. But as December unfolded, that all changed. Right now, it is as bad as it has been even since back in September when we were at the height of the problem of this supply chain crisis. The fact that containers are moving through the ports faster, that's nonsense. The idea that there's no more vessels that's stranded out there waiting to be unloaded at our ports, that's nonsense. The concept that the shipping rates have come down. She said they come down 25%. That's nonsense. Well, but think about it. Maybe what she's saying, you can manipulate numbers, and I think that's what's going on here. I mean, ocean freight rates for say a 40-foot container, which is one of these large shipping containers that you see on our highways, pre-crisis was about $4,000, $4,500 to ship from Asia, the eastern coast of China, to the eastern coast of the United States, and it was about $1,500 less to ship it to the west coast of the United States. So that's somewhere between $3,000 to the west coast to $4,500 to the east coast. Right now, we're seeing rates in the $18,000 to $20,000 a container. $18,000 to $20,000 a container. You know, do the math, how much more that is than what they have been, even as of, 24 months ago, or even as of 12 months ago. It wasn't nearly what we're seeing today. Now, the height was $25,000, and we've seen $26,000. So she says it's gone down 20% or 25%. Yeah, it's gone down from $25,000 down to $18,000, but that's a long way from the $4,000 that we've experienced for the last 20 years. Freight rates have been very stable. They've hardly moved. It was one of the most predictable things in commerce was what it cost to ship a container across the ocean, and that's all out the window. So no, container rates are still at an historic high, and there's still a deficit. Despite, even if you're willing to pay those prices, you still cannot get the containers. And then, God forbid, if you get a container to the port and it clears the port, try to find a trucker. Try to find a driver for the truck, for the chassis. Try to find a chassis to put the container on. Then try to find a truck or a driver to drive it to where it's ultimately going. And if you say, oh, well, we're going to use the rail system. We don't need truck drivers. We're going to put it on the rail. They're just as messed up. There's our trains in the terminals at our train yards also don't have people, and they still can't unload in our train terminals. No, the crisis is raging. It's not getting better, and that's why you're seeing inflation continue to increase because of these supply chain problems.
Well, that was a very good soliloquy.
Well,
I want you to know that.
Well, I guess you could say
explained it.
That I'm in the middle of it, and I see it every day. So when I hear that
right.
the crisis and the president saved Christmas and all of that, I mean, it's nonsense. And don't take it from me. Go to any of the retailers in our country. Go to any retailer and go into a Walmart, go into a Home Depot, go into wherever. Look at the shelves. Look at all the empty spaces.
Biden said there are no empty shelves. He doesn't know where they're at. Listen, I'm experiencing the exact same thing on a different level than you are right now. My problem, and I'm a publisher, those out there know that I own magazines, serious magazines, and we use a lot of paper. Since this disaster has occurred over the last few months, all right, I'm spending 25 to 35% more just for my paper. That's on top of my regular print bill, which includes paper, by the way. These are premiums that I have to pay. Why? Because the paper's coming in from overseas. They can't get it here, Neil. The chemicals that you use are coming in from overseas. They can't get it here. And the printers are getting to the point of panic. So, no, you're right. None of this is real. This is complete la-la land.
Well, Rich, this is a great segue to our next guest, who is James Crean. He's the president of a Texas-based innovation company that accelerates product delivery through integrated engineering and smart manufacturing, and making product here in the United States. Well, hopefully that's the answer. James Crean, who's the president and CTO of Crean, he's going to be with us just in a moment.
Promoting American industry. This is Made in America with Neil Asbury and Rich Rothman.
Welcome back to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we just talked a lot about supply chain and supply chain problems, and getting containers and clearing through our ports,
and the myths, the myths that are out there coming from the administration.
And I got to tell you, I mean, it is still really messed up. As an American manufacturer, we do import a lot of containers of components and materials and so forth from overseas, and our manufacturing here in the United States is greatly disrupted because of the flow of material or the lack of flow of material. But there's been a lot of discussion, especially under the previous administration. It was a big thing with President Trump about bringing our jobs and our manufacturing jobs specifically back to America from Asia. It's a process known as backshoring, reshoring, onshoring, which is the process of Americans, a lot of American entrepreneurs such as myself, I started my career as a young guy. I lived in Southeast Asia and created a large manufacturing firm in Asia. I sold the business and I moved back to the United States and I became an American manufacturer, something I'm very proud of, creating jobs here in our country. So our guest right now, James Crean, is the president and the CTO of Crean, Inc., which is a Texas-based innovation company that accelerates product delivery through integrated engineering and smart manufacturing, helping entrepreneurs make products right here in our country. What a wonderful thing to do. James, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So how you doing? I mean, I've worked with businesses like yours, helping us to engineer products, and then once the product's engineered, then you have to have it made. And so, that time cycle, I mean, that's a pretty, there's a lot going on there, and it generally takes, 18 to 24 months for this whole thing to kind of play out if you're lucky. Then you got all the tooling costs and so on. My issue, James, here in the United States, just tooling is so much more expensive. I mean, those tools that are used to form metals or to inject with plastics and the molds to create all types of different shapes and so on that goes into our products has been just so expensive. How do you help companies who want to make product here in the United States?
Well, there's a number of things, and you're right. It's challenging the various different pieces of the puzzles, getting it all put together, right? And it's not a problem that's going to get solved overnight, but what we focus on is really speed, right? That's kind of the number one thing that we focus on with our clients is how do we get to market faster? How do we accelerate the production that's already going on that you might have in your plant, and or setting up a new plant, and we find that focus helps with efficiency and cost, and it brings more flexibility to the manufacturing environment. And those are the things that we focus on, and it makes a huge difference. And we find we can pretty well compete. Our clients compete globally without any trouble because you're so much more efficient than your competitors overseas.
Well, so how does that, when you start thinking about where this administration wants us to go, and one of the things I'm thinking of is energy, and energy is forcing us right now. I mean, the only people going to make and they're a great benefit from this administration in terms of energy. It's going to be China and a few other folks overseas that are also involved with China, and the products are going to be there. How do you onshore making solar panels effectively and windmills effectively and getting the products that you need in the manufacturing of lithium batteries effectively? How do we do that? I mean, that seems to be where this administration and those in the green environment want to go. And I mean, to the point that they're saying that in the United States, I mean, Biden said it, by 2035, you're not going to have fossil fuel vehicles. I don't know how the hell he's going to do it, but he says he's going to, you have to do that. So how do we play with that? Are you people looking at that and saying, well, wait a minute, there's a way for us to get involved? Or, maybe there isn't a way for us. Maybe we need more time. What do you think about that? I mean, I find that to be a conundrum.
It's a big issue, absolutely. I mean, you just look at aluminum, right? Aluminum effectively is like solidified energy, right? Because it takes so much energy to convert it from bauxite to aluminum ore. And so when you don't have policies that recognize that energy is one of the big inputs to manufacturing, it definitely creates challenges for entrepreneurs and business owners out there. So it's an important issue, and it's what you're talking about highlights how there has to be a government strategy for success. I I never rely on the government to solve any of the problems that we face, but they sure can create a lot of them. I have ultimate faith in the American entrepreneur, ultimately to do what's necessary to overcome some of these kinds of things, but it definitely creates big challenges. And so, yeah, I mean, energy is critical. Energy policy is critical. It's one of the things that was so empowering in the last administration is that, the kind of the do everything approach really brought energy prices down. And, you couple that with the tariffs and that were placed on China, that I think really sparked a real bring the jobs back to America mentality, and hey, we can do this, and also the impact that the administration had on regulation also. So those kinds of policies need to continue. I mean, those it's not about politics; it's about just good policy that helps manufacturers in America to be competitive and successful. And
James, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's all about policy, and it's like we talk this big game in our country about, we're going to bring back all these manufacturing jobs. We're going to bring back these manufacturing jobs, but then our government just implements policies that just makes it even harder, right? So they create the conditions that the only way for an entrepreneur to survive is to take their business offshore, because there's no other way. I mean, if you take a look at the cost of doing business and the cost of regulation in our country, a lot of hidden costs, energy, we can just keep on going on, supply chain costs, healthcare costs, taxes. If the Democrats get their way, we're going to be one of the highest tax countries in the world. That just drives our jobs overseas, So, they talk a good game, but boy, they have no clue what they're doing to create the environment for our entrepreneurs to come home. Our entrepreneurs want to come home, create environment so they can. They just want to be able to come home. James Crean, thanks for being with us, President and CTO of Crean, a Texas company that helps American businesses engineer and build products right here at home. Thanks for coming on, James.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I still have a lot more to go over. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, electric vehicles. We're hearing a lot about electric vehicles.
You're going to hear a lot more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. Electric vehicle. I mean, it sounds pretty cool, and I think their day will come, and I think that the free market will decide when that day is right, and how it looks like, because it's got to be competitive, it's got to be convenient, you got to be able to travel across the country. Isn't it like getting on Route 66 and traveling across the country and seeing America? Isn't that like a great thing? Is it something that we all should do? But you got to be able to plug in and charge as you're going across Route 66, or it's going to get pretty lonely out there with the coyotes.
Yeah. Well, that kind of defines what America is all about. I mean, the thing about America that's kind of cool, and I think Route 66 defines it really, including that show with George Maharis and Martin Milner, is that you can just get in your car and go. Free spirit, go. And the neat thing is that language is spoke everywhere. We're a homogeneous country. So with this part of the country on the left, on the East Coast versus another part, it's a very similar country. You're going to have the same stores. You're going to have the same concerns, different weather. So, but you can get in your car and you can drive for 350 miles and fill it up in 10 minutes when you need another tank of gas. The problem is with these electrics, and we can go into this a little bit more, obviously, in this segment, is that you can drive for 300 and some odd miles if you're lucky, and then you got to stop for, I don't know, an hour? I mean, an hour and 15? I'm not quite sure. It used to be 2 hours to charge it up, quick charge. I don't know what it is right now. I think it's about an hour or so to do that. And they're working on that because it's in the cord. You got to be able to get the power going through the cord faster. And the faster it goes, the hotter the cord gets. So they have to do something with it, and they're working on it. But But, Neil, you said something very important in the beginning of the segment. 2 words, free market. The market has to be there. It has to be. If the market's there, then the private sector will build for it, won't it? It'll have the product that the market wants. That's called success. That's understanding the depth of the market and whether you're going to be able to sell the products that you produce. If people want it, it's affordable price, you can make it work and they're excited, and you can get it charged up in a reasonable amount of time, analogous to a fossil fuel engine, then I don't mind doing that. I think it's okay. You know, for one thing, they're fast as hell, electric cars. They accelerate like a mother. They go fast. But I don't know if we're ready for that, and that's the problem. Take a listen to what you have here.
Yeah, let's listen to Neil Cavuto and Lauren Fix. Lauren's been on our radio show. She's really an expert in this area. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Lauren, I'm always amazed with this push for electric vehicles. I guess in GM's case, they're all going to be that way, 2035. Volvo just a couple of years away. Is the demand there to match all this?
No. And honestly, I don't think 2035 is going to be it. But 2035, sure, you can have electric cars. Everyone should have electric cars. You can have that option. But if you drive across this beautiful country from coast to coast, and I've literally been in every state, I can tell you that it's fine when you're in big cities or you're in suburban areas. When you look at some of these rural areas, there's no way electric applications are going to work. They're going to have the infrastructure, which is not there. Remember, we can't put this load on this electric grid. The electric grid is a big part of it.
And that's an important point.
That's a super point.
It's that the electric grid, you know, where does the electric that goes into these cars come from? It comes from fossil fuels largely.
That's exactly right. To get the megawatts that you need, because the wind and solar, not going to do it.
It's not there. So you're
not there.
So the irony of the whole situation is you're trading out fossil fuels for fossil fuels. And I don't know if anybody has connected those dots, but when you put that outlet into your wall there and you plug in your appliance, that is fossil fuels coming through that cord there, largely, right? I mean, how much of our electric grid is 70% of our grid is coal, and then you have natural gas,
yep.
which is
huge,
which is another huge part,
and a great fossil fuel, which
is a lot of the coal is being replaced by natural gas. Which is, by the way, it's still a fossil fuel, right? It's still coming from fossil fuel,
unless you go to nuclear.
If you go to nuclear, now because I have a manufacturing plant in Augusta, Georgia, and there's a large nuclear plant being built just outside of Augusta, massive. And if you go to Augusta right now and any surrounding community, you cannot get a hotel. People from all over the country have come in to build this nuclear power plant. But it's the first plant to be built in the United States in the last 25 or 30 years.
Yeah, since China Syndrome, the movie, scared the hell out of everyone.
Since 3 Mile Island.
Yeah,
whenever
exactly.
That was...
Well, they were contiguous.
That was back in the late 70s. I remember that. I was going to school in South Jersey, which wasn't too far from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So, yes, nuclear power. But that's a whole nother topic. Hey, Rich, we got to take a quick break, but folks, we're going to be right back. We still got a little time left and a lot more to talk about. Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we're gonna go back to Jen Psaki. I mean, we heard from her earlier.
No, we're going to circle back. I think that's more. We're going to circle back to Jen Psaki.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is really our laugh of the day.
Yeah. Well, this is the
laugh of the day segment.
Yeah. Sure.
And let's hear what she had to say about President Biden not having time to think.
I know the president doesn't have public events today. He does have a number of meetings with policy teams, and that's often what he's doing behind the scenes. If he were standing here today, which I know he's always invited, is what you guys will say, but he would say we never give him any free time or any time to think, and that is probably true.
President Biden isn't getting enough time to think. The White House is facing backlash now for those comments, as records reveal 27% of his presidency has been spent in Delaware.
Well, there it is, folks.
I don't know where to go with that, but
and training
the
a dog.
president doesn't have time to think.
Yeah, he's got to.
I mean, that's pretty obvious, though, isn't that? Isn't that the sort of obvious thing?
He's
taken time to think.
He's taken more time off than Trump took in the entire 4 years.
Well, the thing is, and when Ron DeSantis is really doing something right is when the whole country and these really progressive, super progressive liberals are they can't wait for Ron DeSantis and to beat up Ron DeSantis. I mean, they really, really despise this guy because, he is, he's really resonated with a large part of of our society and our people. So you heard Joy Reid and all of these others really crucifying this guy, last week for not being around because he was with his wife for cancer treatment.
Why don't we have that soundbite?
Let's listen to that.
Let's go to soundbite 3, Peter. Number 3 and number 3. The missing governor attack.
DeSantis saw an opportunity and snatched it, knowing some businesses didn't like those pesky lockdowns, and that nothing, not even a life-threatening airborne virus, would keep spring breakers from partying like it's 2019. It's a broad approach to herd immunity, which opened the door to a treatment over prevention approach that plays with people's lives. He boosts monoclonal antibodies, a treatment one of his top donors just happens to have invested millions of dollars in, which also happens to be ineffective against Omicron. But this saga doesn't end there, because in December, as Florida shattered COVID records, its leader, DeSantis, vanished. Poof! Nowhere to be found. Not even on Fox News. Not even in Cancun.
What an insult.
What
an
guy's
insult.
with his wife, because, she's
taking chemotherapy.
She's taking it, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really bizarre. That's like so sad. And, why is everybody rushing to Florida from all over the country right now? They're all coming down. If they're not coming down here to live because they can't take the blue states anymore, they just can't take it anymore.
Well,
they're coming down here in
exactly.
record numbers. And even their politicians who rail against the free state of Florida, the most freest state in our country, they're even coming down here in droves to get out of whatever it is that they've created, the environment that they created for themselves back home.
Well, the good news is, AOC was here just last week. She was down here partying, and she got her. She still has a student ID card from Boston, so she got a discount on American Airlines. And then Swalwell, that genius, was here, and he was partying, but he was criticizing him also for not being here. And then, of course, Pelosi just bought a $24 million home just north of where I live. And she's going to live here. Oh, by the way, on the ocean, waterfront property. So I guess she's not too worried about climate change. So that belies that whole fact. She probably had a conversation with Al Gore, who also bought a huge property on the water, and of course uses a lot of private jets because he has to. He just can't go, commercial. So I just find it. What really bothers me in this whole thing too? She said the pesky lockdowns. Joy Reid has never run anything in her life. She has no idea what it's like to own a business and work a business. She buys things. She doesn't create things. Lockdowns aren't just pesky. They're devastating.
They're devastating to our small businesses. And,
oh, my
and
God, yes.
I met someone the other day, and they had a restaurant in Illinois. They had a restaurant in Illinois. And they've had it for, it was passed down in their family.
Sure.
It was passed down in their family. So this was like the grandfather, the father, and now it's theirs. An Italian restaurant, a pizzeria type restaurant. They said, look, we can't make it anymore. We can't be there anymore. We can't have this. You can open, you cannot open. You got to show vaccines, And look, we're not the vaccine police. It's really devastating to our people. Don't want to work. Security issues. We're so fearful of our safety. They just sold everything, packed up the truck, and moved to Florida and said they're opening up a restaurant in St. Petersburg because they can't handle the whole Chicago thing anymore. And you're finding a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses just can't do it anymore. Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.